Hi, and welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast, co-hosted by Abby Thiering, the Badass Breastfeeder, and Dianne Cassidy, IBCLC.
Hey, welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast. We are up to episode 16. This is Dianne.
And this is Abby.
And you guys probably already know that. But we're going to talk about when to wean. So I can tell you when not to wean, when people tell you when to wean. Like, that's pretty much my contribution to this whole thing today. Is like,
or on a bad day.
Yes, that's the other thing. Do not wean on a bad day. Because how many people do you hear from that say, I'm over this today, I think I'm done, I'm going to wean. And it's like day 3 or something.
And and you're often, I'm over like my job sometimes. I'm over my marriage. I'm over being a mom. But you don't just quit. You don't just quit your job or get divorced or whatever when things are bad. You have to wait. You got to wait it out a little bit.
And other things that you're going to do with your child. I remember I had this amazing lactation consultant that I worked under when I was first starting, and she was hilarious. She would just put things in a way that were just hilarious. They were just oh my God, I didn't think about it like that. It would just be funny. But she would be and we worked in the hospital setting. So, sometimes you'll get people in the hospital that were it would be day 2 and they'd be this is too hard. I'm just going to quit. And she'd be so I guess those same people are going to carry their child around forever because they're not going to be able to walk the first time they try to do that either. Or they're always going to be in Velcro shoes because they're not going to be able to tie their shoes the first time they ever do it either. So your child, no matter how amazing and brilliant they are, they don't get everything the first time you try to do it.
No, that's right. That happens with everything.
Yeah.
That's what Jack was just playing this video game the other day and he's like, I can't do it. I was you just started. You just tried for the first time right now. How are you going to be able to do it?
Right.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the same thing. So that's kind of your early breastfeeding, oh my God, I want to wean. But which we see all the time too. And that's weaning on your worst day. That's what we don't want you to do. We don't want you to wean on your worst day. We want you to contact us or some other very, very supportive person to tell you today sucks. Tomorrow's a new day. Let's move on.
Right. Yeah. And any kind of problems if any kind of problems that you're going through, early on or any time, there are solutions.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But the whole, when I first said, okay, we're going to talk about when to wean today, my first thought was when your baby is not a baby anymore. Is that when you're trying to decide when to wean? Or, what if you're considering, okay, you might have in your head when you first start your breastfeeding relationship, I want to wean at a year, and up comes that year, and is it time? Are you ready for that yet? What kind of questions do you get about weaning? Or do people...
Yeah, no, people often ask, when should I wean? When am I supposed to wean? How old is too old? And it's, you read these, nobody can tell you this. This is the thing. There's no answer that somebody can give you. So there's the WHO has the whole thing where you're, breastfeed exclusively for 6 months and then up to 2 years and beyond for as long as mom and baby are happy with this.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's great and everything too. But then they throw the whole 2 years old in there. And then it's oh my God, well, 2 years old. And then, then everybody's oh, well, what am I supposed to? And I don't know because I'm breastfeeding a 6.5-year-old. So, if you want to tell him that it's time to wean, go ahead. Cause I've had these conversations with him and he's not in agreement with you. So, he and I am also I don't think it's not always fun. He only nurses to sleep at night. So it's 1 or 2 minutes of my day. And I don't like it. His mouth is gigantic and it doesn't feel great. And, I think I could be well, that's it. We're not going to do this anymore. But I don't really want to. I think it's fine. I think it's fine for us. It's fine for him. It's the way he's always gone to sleep. And he won't be breastfeeding when he's 16. Right. He won't want to do that. And, my thing is just well, I'll just, let him decide because that's how I feel right now. And then other people feel differently.
Mm-hmm. It's a very individual thing, which is why when we first opened this and I said, don't mean because somebody else tells you to, like, I'm not trying to be, snarky or anything, but
no,
really
but
it is an individual decision.
No. And this is, I just had this whole, conversation on my Facebook page about this because yesterday or the day before, whatever, some woman emailed me and she said that that her husband that her and her husband decided when they first had their baby, they decided, well, they'll breastfeed up until 3 years old, but not after 3 years old. Well, happy birthday. The kid's 3 years old now. And she's like, I don't want to, I don't feel like he's ready. Like, I feel like, I just don't feel like it's over for us. She said, but my husband's kind of like, he's 3. Okay, so let's have a big party. Congratulations, you're done with breastfeeding. And I said to her, again, not to be snarky, but your husband's opinion will matter when he has breasts and he's breastfeeding the baby.
True.
The breastfeeding relationship is between the person who has the breasts and the person who's suckling on the breasts. These are the people who are involved in the decision. And then, people are like, well, no, my husband is a part of our, parenting decisions and blah, blah, blah. And I wish my husband could be here right now because, I said the same. And he, my husband was like, I don't have anything to do with this decision. Do you want to keep breastfeeding? He's like, he has nothing to do with this. And he's like, whatever you want to do, fine, then do it. So, yeah, there's always going to be somebody who's going to tell you, and and there's even people, even your doctor might be like, well,
they will always say that.
Yeah, well, your child's a year old now, so actually, the breast milk doesn't have any nutrients in it anymore, so it's not beneficial to you or your baby. Or, the baby's too old. They're going to, have, psychological issues if you keep breastfeeding them until they're like, older. And this is all a bunch of hogwash. Breast milk never loses its nutritional value, and breastfeeding is more than food, so who cares?
Right. You're not going to psychologically damage anybody or anything.
Good God. Quite the opposite.
Right.
People are psychologically damaged when like hateful and abusive and uncaring things happen to them. And that is not breastfeeding.
No.
So obviously, you're going to feel, I think if every woman can sit and meditate for a moment and remove the doctor's voice, remove their husband's voice, remove their mother-in-law's voice, and just sit for a minute and think about how you feel about your breastfeeding, you'll know if it's time to wean or not. Mm-hmm. And if you feel like it is, that's okay.
Right. That is okay. But
like it's not, and your child is 6, that's okay.
It really should be your decision. And it's very easy for us to sit up here and say, oh, it should be up to you. Because it should be. But it is hard when people are in your ear all the time sharing their opinion with you, even though they think they're being helpful, and they might not be. And then you're feeling like you're trying to please everybody. But this really is definitely a decision that's going to be on you. And you don't want to think back on it later and be like, I should have continued on. Or I should have. Right, I wasn't ready yet, and now I did it.
Yeah, right. It's not like those decisions where you can say like, well, if, we'll stop, I don't know, doing this. We'll stop going to the Florida Keys for a vacation for a while. If that doesn't work out, we'll go back. Like you can't go back with like a 10-year-old and be like, oh, let's start breastfeeding again. Like this is it. You're in it. When you end it, it's over.
Yeah.
And so don't quit on a bad day, because there's going to be lots of bad days. And then, it's so hard, especially when it's your partner who's like there all the time and who you've maybe had like conversations with this about in the past. I mean, I did the same thing. I was like, okay, with my first, I was like, okay, I'm going to breastfeed for a year. And I would like ask my friends and I'd be like, how long did you breastfeed? How long, and they're like, well, like a year. And I was like, okay, that sounds good. A year. And breastfeeding was so hard in the beginning. When I got to a year, it was finally working. I wasn't about to, I was just like, geez, oh, okay. It finally works. Okay. He's a year. And then I was like, no, well, come on. I mean, we worked so hard to get here. I'm not stopping it now. And then, he got a little older, maybe like 2 and 3. And I said to my husband, I said, I kind of feel like he's a highly sensitive kid. I said, I kind of feel like he's going to be one of those kids that's breastfeeding until like 7. And my husband was like, oh, geez. And I said, I don't know. I I think it's okay. And that's fine. And, at first it's weird because we don't breastfeed 7-year-olds in our culture. Like that's just, you don't see it. So, but then as he got older and we were just breastfeeding, it just makes sense for us. It's just like, what? Yeah, it's not, it doesn't, it's normal. It's normal.
It's normal. It's normal. And it's not, oh my God, it's not anybody else's decision. I really, I keep going back to that, and I've said it 18 times already during this whole podcast.
Well, but the big thing, but that's the thing, right? Because nobody would question, no one would say no woman would be even having these questions in their head if there wasn't somebody out there, yapping about it in this, wasn't, in this place that's not theirs. We would just be like, okay, I'm just going along. The only reason that the question even gets put into people's heads is because people are like, when are you going to wean? Isn't he too old? Don't you think you should, don't you think that, this is harming him at this point? And then she's all, oh.
Right.
And then she's questioning it. It doesn't come from inside of us. The questions don't come from inside of you, because inside of you, you know that you're not harming your child by breastfeeding. You know that this is the best thing for your child. You know that this is, this is what your breasts were made to do and what your child was made to do. And all of the questions and all of the other stuff that gets in the way of it all comes from the outside. It doesn't come from the inside.
And it's okay to change those guidelines that you set in your head. I meet people that do that all the time. They say, okay, maybe I'll breastfeed for 6 months, or maybe, and a lot of times I will encourage people, because I'll have people that ask me in class, how long am I supposed to breastfeed for? And it's like, all right, I'll give you the standard speech of the guidelines, but honest to God, I want to get people through the hospital stay. That's kind of the way I feel about it at the beginning. I want to get you through the hospital stay and home, or wherever you have your baby, through the first 3 or 4 days, and then through the first 2 weeks, and then let's get through the first month, and let's, take it day by day and see where you end up. But when you have this thought process where a lot of moms right now want to be able to plan out everything that goes on, I'm going to breastfeed to 6 months, and I'm going to start solid foods, and then I'll breastfeed to a year, and then I'm going to wean.
Yeah.
And then up comes that date, and it's okay to feel like, I remember I worked with this one girl who used to say, I just want to get him through one more winter. Just one more winter with my antibodies. That's, just one more. And that's all right. It's all right to change your guidelines. It's all right to change your patterns and change what you're doing and, kind of adjust it accordingly as you're moving along. But it's, to have it such a strict in your head, okay, I can only breastfeed to this date, and that's it. You're doing yourself a service. Yeah, I think it's almost like you said, just getting through the day. And then if somebody has in their head, it's kind of because I had in my head a year. If somebody has in their head 6 months, well, maybe I'll breastfeed to 6 months or a year. And then, understand that things could change. But also, that's okay, because by 6 months or by a year, it's going to be working. Mm-hmm. It won't be hard like it is right now. It won't be hard like it is in the beginning. Right.
You'll just be like, okay, I breastfeed. Do I want to keep breastfeeding? It won't be like, oh my God, everything's wrong and all these problems, because there's not all those problems when you have a 6-month-old or a year-old baby. There are certain things obviously you can be struggling with, but it's not like it is in the beginning where the baby's trying to figure it out and you're trying to figure it out. It's all figured out.
I know. And I always feel like I have moms that'll wean when the baby gets teeth or different situations when they go back to work or whatever. And it's okay, if that's really what you want to do. But I always feel like, oh my gosh, it's such a shame to wean after 6 months. At 6 months is a shame, because you've gone this far and you've gone through the hardest stuff. And I know when we did the podcast about biting, and I talked about okay, the situation my son bit me at one point, only bit me the one time, and he was 7 months. And I remember thinking, well, I'm not going to stop now. I've already come this far. We're going to have to figure out how to get past it. But some other people are like, okay, I got bit. That's it. I'm weaning. I'm done. So it's you've probably gone through worse with this baby.
Yeah.
You can find the help and go and adjust it and, and get past it unless you really truly do want to wean at that point. But it's really unfortunate to start buying formula at 6 months.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, 6 months is, and that's the other thing that I think is important to discuss because people will say, well, if I do, I think people have in their head like if they just breastfeed their baby for as long as their baby wants to, that they'll never stop.
Right.
And kids do stop. At some point they do. Even when they're really old kids and you're like, oh God, you're never going to stop. We're going to have to like come to your recess in high school or, and breastfeed you. Like you don't like, it's not going to happen. They're going to stop. And, people ask like, when do kids stop? And that's a really hard question to answer. And you can probably speak to this better, but it's not normal for a baby to stop breastfeeding on their own before like 2 or 2.5.
Right.
Is that right?
That's correct.
So if there's something going on before that where your baby is stopping and you think, oh, they're weaning now, that's not what's happening. That's probably a nursing strike that comes from a whole array of, well, I guess maybe not a whole array, but a few issues that could trigger a nursing strike. But that's what it is, and that can be worked through as well. Mm-hmm. So if you've got this baby, it's like, okay, well, I'll just breastfeed until my baby's ready to stop, and your baby's a year, and suddenly your baby hasn't breastfed for a couple of days, and you're like, oh no, I'm so sad. He's like weaning now. He's not.
No, he's not.
Because that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen at 1 year old. So, you can use your baby as a guideline too. Like that's, if you have a child that's younger than 2 or 2.5, what would you say? 2 or 2.5?
I usually say right around 2. Like that's kind of, most babies don't self-wean before 2. That's, not in their makeup. And that is, I'm really glad you brought that up because that is something that I did not know. And, I've always said, when I had my kids, I had no idea what I was doing, and that's kind of how I ended up here. But mine all weaned right around 15 months or so when they were in, ironically, it was right about the same time that they were just learning how to walk steadily and getting involved in more things. And now that I look back on it, they were just too busy. And I didn't know that then. And if I had known you take them to a quiet room or try them maybe at night or try them again the next day or whatever. But I didn't know that. I just kind of figured, oh, okay, they must be weaning. And I can tell you, right now, like 15 years later or 17 years later, I was not ready. I was not. I didn't want to wean them yet. And now knowing what I know, I'm kind of sad that nobody said to me, you know what, they're probably just too busy and distracted. You need to take them out of the situation and, try them in a different place or try them if they're not weaning. They're just, it's a just different stage of development for them. I mean, if you're okay with it being a weaning situation, then okay. But if you don't want it to be, it probably is not.
Right. If it's under 2, yeah.
If it's under 2,
and so if you have a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old and they just kind of like start weaning and, you could trust that will happen. Because I think that's the other thing, what comes into when to wean is like, I have to actively do something to get my child to stop breastfeeding at a certain time. That's my responsibility as a parent, because breastfeeding is so, it's not, we don't see it a lot and we don't know a lot about it in our culture. We don't talk about it. We don't see it. It's not like, we don't hear about all of these things. And so we think, well, at some point he'll be too old, or at some point I have to intervene. Mm-hmm. And so when the question comes, when the question is, when do I wean? When do I need to do that? The answer is never. You never need to do that. You never need to intervene and take your baby off of your breast. If you want to, before your baby has stopped on their own, that's a different story.
Right.
But as far as your responsibility of weaning your child when they, quote unquote, need to wean, that the answer is never. You never need to do anything to get them to stop breastfeeding.
Exactly. You don't. If you choose to wean for whatever reason that is, for you, you choose to wean, I think it's really important to remember that you can't just stop cold turkey.
Yes. That is a really good thing to talk about. We should talk about that too.
Yeah. Yes, and that always makes me worried when
me too.
moms do that, and that's for a couple of reasons. Now, I mean, if your baby is older, they're 2 or 3 years old, you probably aren't going to get that whole full and engorgement, although some women still do. But you might not, because, your body is naturally kind of evolved and adjusted, and, the baby doesn't feed that much at that age. But your hormones and everything still really go through a change, and your body needs to adapt to that. And some women almost feel like it's like a depression.
Yes.
And that's that we don't, and then they're taken by surprise, and so I don't want any mom to feel like they're going through almost like a postpartum depression kind of feeling when they wean their baby. It's a very natural process because all of a sudden now hormones are changing, but there's ways to do it gradually so you don't feel like that.
Well, and that's also talking about from the mother's perspective. I mean, you think about how this adult woman feels about it. Imagine how your baby or your child, your toddler, how small child, however old they are at that point, they don't understand what's happening. So, and they use breastfeeding for all sorts of things, including comfort and safety and security and familiarity. And it's just the thing that they've always known. They were born doing it, right?
Right.
And so these things need to be replaced. If over time, this sense of where are they going to find this sense of safety and security and the comfort and all of that? You don't just rip it out from under them like a rug. Mm-mm. It has to be done slowly. Weaning is a process. It's not just a decision to make on Monday. It's a very long process of helping your child, find all of these things that they got from breastfeeding in different places.
And I think that people want it, once they've made the decision to wean, they want it to be over right then and there. Yeah. And it really cannot happen like that. It really needs to be something that is taken slowly. And, some moms will contact me and be like, okay, I plan to breastfeed to a year. I'm almost at a year. I'm ready. At what point do I start this process and how do I do it? And that's the right way to go about it. But when your baby turns, if you've had it in your head, okay, I'm going to wean when my baby turns 2 or 3, like the mama that, reached out to you on Facebook, and boom, on the 3rd birthday, here's your cake, no more milk, then, your body's going to go, what the hell just happened here?
Yeah, and your child is also going to have a reaction that you are not prepared for.
Right.
And it can be traumatizing for a child to be cut off like that from anything,
right. And that doesn't make them needy or clingy or anything. It's just a natural reaction now, something that they have grown so accustomed to that is comforting. It's like taking away the pacifier. A lot of people want to do it cold turkey and find that doesn't work well. Same with taking away a blanket or any kind of other security. You're taking away a security from your child, and that needs to be replaced.
And there are things that you can do starting today if this is something you want to do. And we talk about breastfeeding with boundaries and setting boundaries and creating more structure around it. Mm-hmm. You can start doing those things today. And that can, and I think once you have some sort of, some more boundaries around breastfeeding, maybe you're more, maybe, you create it so that, you have some predictability to it, exactly, there's certain times in the day where, where you're going to nurse and a certain length of time that you're going to do it. It can give you a lot of sanity back. It can give you a lot of sense of control back, to where maybe then weaning doesn't seem like such an emergency. Mm-hmm. You can say, okay, I can actually manage this now. Because in the beginning, it's just a crap show, right? I mean, It's just like, we're breastfeeding all the time, breastfeeding on demand. We got to keep the milk supply up and baby's crying, and it works for everything, right? And it does work for everything because you're teaching your child that this is where they can get safety and security and milk and all of these things. And so again, when we start weaning, we start creating these boundaries, their child is going to have a very strong reaction to this being taken away. But if you're creating boundaries, you can work through that and your child will be okay. And you might have a sense of control to where, like I said, weaning doesn't seem like an emergency.
Right. Yeah. There's options. There's lots
and people
taking it easy with it can really help you open those doors for you.
Right. And, people will say like, well, how do I breastfeed with boundaries? And that's something that we're going to have to
we're definitely
going to dedicate a whole show to because, oops. Sorry.
Absolutely.
Okay. What? Here's the child in here. What?
So,
okay, go pee in the potty. Exley finds it necessary to announce to me when he has to pee.
If anybody else has a pee break, needs to
no
go
matter
have a pee
what
break.
I'm doing, he has to tell me, and no matter who else is around, he just has to tell me.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
That he has to pee.
The one last thing I want to make sure that we touch on is that there's a lot of moms that go back to work, and they will work their little hearts out pumping and pumping and pumping and pumping for these babies. And then a year comes, and a lot of times those mamas will call me and be like, I'm over the pumping. I'm over it.
Oh, please.
I just cannot do this anymore, but I'm not really ready to wean yet. How do I do this? You can stop pumping, go with solids, your kid's eating meals, and you can breastfeed in the morning and at night, and that's it.
Yeah.
If that's what you want. And you could do that for as long as you want to.
And you'll have enough milk. Yep. Yes, right. And you will have enough milk. You don't have to pump frantically all day for your baby to have enough milk to nurse in the morning and at night. Like your body will adjust. Your body will know.
Yeah, it absolutely
when your baby, when you're going to, your body just knows, and your baby will help it learn. And you can totally, that's a good thing to remind people, because I was over pumping after like a month. I mean, I was like, this is not, I mean, people that pump and work, I can't imagine how that, I can't imagine.
I know.
And so, I would say as soon as you can put that pump away, Jesus, put it away.
Yeah. Put it away.
Put it away. Just enjoy it. Just enjoy going to work, come home, breastfeed. That can be a totally doable routine in your home.
Yeah. And it's a great way to just reconnect after you've been gone all day. And, your body is just naturally, slowly weaning down, and that's fine. That's a good way to do it. But there's tons of options.
Yes.
Yeah. So anything else to add? Now that we've weaned everybody, not weaned them, we've taught them about weaning, and hopefully nobody's weaning. But if you are, I hope this was helpful. And if you were thinking about, oh my gosh, at some point, if I want to wean, what do I do? Or when, or how do I deal with other people who want me to wean? I hope this was helpful, because we want everybody to feel empowered to make your own decisions.
Right. And that's what it all comes down to, is making your own decision. And it's not about what anybody else wants or what anybody else thinks, even though no matter who they are to you, it's up to you. You never have to intervene to wean. So the answer to that is, when do I need to wean, is never. And when should I wean is when you decide it's time, when you want to.
Absolutely. And until then, enjoy it. Enjoy your breastfeeding relationship with your child, because there's nothing else in the world like it.
Yeah.
And people all the time, the small amount of time that I might spend on Facebook, and when I scroll through the Badass Breastfeeding page, there's always somebody who puts up, I miss those days.
Yes, totally. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like, don't be in a hurry to get rid of it.
That's true.
It goes really quick. So that is that. So on a totally different level now, everybody will have to stay tuned for next week, because we are going to talk about sex after baby.
And you all are going to hear about, you want to. Everybody wants to talk about sex.
Yeah, everyone wants to talk about it.
Even when it's after baby.
I know. So,
even when it's after baby, nobody wants to actually do it. We still want to talk about it.
And we could talk, people complain about it, however you want that talk to be, we're going to, cover it all. So we will hopefully talk to everybody next week. See ya.
Bye.